Nathan Phillips Square. Love it or hate it, it's one of Toronto's most iconic landmarks. It's caught the eye of Hollywood, architecture lovers, and millions of tourists every single year. But did Toronto choose the right design? And in order to answer this question, we have to go back to the very beginning. By 1925, what we now call Old City Hall was no longer big enough to accommodate a growing city. So some of the first plans for a new city hall in Civic Square emerged around 1927. This was a design by Alfred Chapman, and the plans not only incorporated the old Registry of Deeds and Land Titles building, but it called for a duplicate of that building along the eastern flank. And between these two beautiful neoclassical style buildings would be a domed City Hall tower. Yet, as was the fate for a lot of developments in Toronto around this time, the Great Depression put an end to these dreams. Now, it took some time before Toronto had another proposal, but by 1943, the city was back at it. By 1945, city staff developed another plan for City Hall and a civic square. And this one was interesting because the structure would be in the southeast corner of the square with its back facing towards Lennox's old City Hall. As well, we see in this design that the 1917 Registry building was saved. After a little bit of debate, the city decided to abandon these plans and move forward with other proposals. And between 1946 and 1955, we saw three very different proposals for the site. Now, the 1946 plans weren't overly interesting. It would have the courthouses, municipal offices, and police headquarters in a new building facing an open civic square. Again, we see that the registry building was saved in this proposal. Ultimately, the city decided not to proceed with this one. In 1953, we saw a very radical proposal. This was developed by a Chicago pension fund, and it included demolishing Old City Hall and putting up a mega structure. It called for a 51-story limestone tower. This would be about 18 stories taller than the tallest building in Toronto at the time. And the scale of this building is insane. It would have more square footage than the Empire State Building. And it would feature a grand staircase that would face westward towards a new civic square. Ultimately, the city decided to reject these plans, with then Mayor Alan Lamport saying, if anyone's going to build a city hall, it's going to be the city. And this brings us to 1955, which was an extremely pivotal point in Toronto's decision for a new city hall. This time, three architecture firms got involved and proposed plans based off symmetry and order. It included formal squares, reflecting pools, tree-lined paths, and a tall office slab balanced by a low U-shaped building in front. This structure would be clad in limestone, and it drew inspiration from the United Nations headquarters in New York City. As well, in this design, we see that the 1917 Registry building was not only saved, but the lower section of the new building would actually be built in the same style, and this is where the City Council chambers would be held. Now, this probably won't surprise a lot of people that know Toronto history, but it took about 3 to 5 minutes for then Mayor Nathan Phillips to completely shoot this plan down. According to Mayor Phillips, this design resembled a grand hotel with a long balcony, and he made a joke saying all it needed was a swimming pool. It was brought to a group of architecture students at the University of Toronto. They called it a monstrous monument to backwardness. So in 1955, Toronto had municipal elections, and this was on the ballot, and Torontonians voted against funding for this proposal. So this led to a decision that would completely change the world of architecture and led to the largest architecture competition in the world at the time. Instead of the city commissioning local architects, they opened this up to an international competition. And when the competition details were published, the worldwide response was overwhelming. Within 2 months, 1,500 architects from around the world asked if they could enter the competition. And by the deadline in 1958, there were 510 complete designs arriving from 42 countries. There were so many submissions that it filled an entire exhibition hall. So the jury that the city set up to choose the best design, it took them 6 days to work their way through all the designs submitted. And eventually, after these 6 days, they narrowed it down to 8 finalists. A lot of them just looked clean, symmetrical, modern, carefully designed. But there was one design that did not fit, and this stood out to the jury and to the city. Now, I probably don't have to describe what this design looked like, but when the juries for this competition reached it, it absolutely blew them away. And the architect, Viljo Revel, was not Canadian, he was actually Finnish. Now, his design didn't just win the competition, it absolutely blew Torontonians away. This story dominated the newspaper headlines in 1958 when the results were announced. It was so popular in the local media that it even eclipsed stories of the United States launching a new satellite. And it didn't just stop in Toronto, but it reached international news. In the eyes of the world and renowned architects, Toronto had chosen something extraordinary. But unfortunately, Revell did not live long enough to see this building completed. In 1961, ground was broken on the site. Mayor Nathan Phillips turned the first shovel of earth as a crowd gathered. He also sang happy birthday to himself as it was his 69th birthday, and the square itself was already named in his honor. After this, construction took years due to unfamiliar design forms and complex engineering. And then in September 1965, it was finally completed. The opening ceremony was massive and included the Governor General, the Prime Minister, and the Premier of Ontario. As well, a crowd of about 14,000 Torontonians gathered to see the opening ceremonies. The new City Hall and Civic Square didn't just change Toronto's skyline, but it ushered in a new era for Toronto. One where a lot of historic and old buildings were demolished for modern ones. And in the eyes of City Council, Toronto wasn't afraid to become a modern city. Today, Nathan Phillips Square is inseparable from Toronto's identity. Yet it remains one of the most discussed buildings in the city. Some hate it, some love it, but maybe that's the point of buildings like this, to evoke an emotional response and debate. If you've watched the video to this point, let me know in the comments below if you believe that Toronto made the right choice, or if there is a better design that the city should have built. And lastly, I have a private group where I share stories and history just like this. There is a waiting list to join it, but if you click the first link in the description below, you can fill out the form to be put on that waiting list. We'll email you when a spot opens up. And if you're not following us on Instagram, we share more stories just like this in a bite-sized format. That will be the second link in the description below. Thanks for watching, and until next time, take care.